Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. All right, back on planet Earth. We have to do another one of those today. All right, about different metrics that predict the outcome of elections and where we are currently in the Republican primary. There's been a slew of other polls that have come out. But, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the third segment. Plus, secondly, which overlaps with the first one, DeSantis' money woes are worse than you think. They are worse than most media outlets are reporting. And we're going to talk about that more. I showed you, or we talked about what I saw when I looked at the filings, all right, that were inevitably released for this quarter, for July, right? So now that we're looking at it, we've had some time to see what the campaign's reaction would be, how much they'd be able to try to turn this around. You have, I months ago made the comparison to Governor Walker. This looks like Scott Walker's campaign to me, not just in the money, but in how they were reacting to things and how they were conducting their campaign, how they were running a campaign. This was the Scott Walker kind of philosophy, which leads to a lot of rich consultants, a lot of rich, really crummy vendors, and a dead stick candidate. All right. So unfortunately, now that we've had a couple of weeks to look into the DeSantis campaign's reaction, I think the DeSantis campaign is on life support and people just aren't being told. And it is, I don't think it's on life support. And people aren't being told about it because he was the great white hype, right? Or the great white hope hype, same thing. And he was the one who was put forward by the establishment and by the anti and never Trump forces as their greatest hope to win some of the MAGA vote so that they can stop Donald Trump. That has not materialized. In fact, in the last 48 hours, we actually got two, what we put in the category of DeSantis bullish polls, one from Monmouth and one from YouGov, both of which were consistently more favorable to Governor DeSantis than the consensus of polling at the time they were released, right? That's how we gauge this and measure this. And both of them show very, very bad news for the governor, all right? Couple that on top of the stuff we're going to talk about in the second segment. The first segment is the metrics, folks, the metrics. I keep hearing things, and we've talked about this before, but I keep hearing it. And there's like these added twists to this line. Only polling suggests Donald Trump is ahead, or by all campaign metrics, Donald Trump is not ahead, or, only polling and by no other metrics does it show Donald Trump's ahead. And we've discussed that before, but now with the added twist of at this time in 2016, at this time in 2015, none of it is right. And I want to show a tweet in a bit from Jared Chambers. He's a follower on Twitter. He's 100% correct. And it's more than that, though, because what he's responding to is what I have responded to in the past. And where is it? I just want to get his tweet up so I don't miss out on what he's talking about. This is something we've seen a lot. Let me bring it up. In the last couple of days, it started with somebody who works at Fox News. And I'm not even going to get into it, but I responded to it myself. He's responding to Joel Griffin. This idea that somehow you can look back at 2016 and see something akin to what we see now is ridiculous. All right, so let's bring this up. I just don't like, folks, keep hearing this word grift, this grift, your grift, that grift, right? This is a grift to get donors to continue to give money to a campaign that by all metrics, which we will talk about, is a failing campaign. Larry Sabato is right. And that is not something you like to hear me say, or I like to hear myself say. He is right. This campaign is in worse shape than anyone is being led on to believe. Here's Joel Griffin, a research fellow from the Heritage, and he says, at this point in 2016, the eventual nominee polled in the low single digits. Most 2024 GOP primary voters have not settled on a candidate. After the first debate in August, expect significant changes in the polls. That's a load of crap. And it's a load of crap for a few reasons. We're going to tackle them one by one. But a few things. Jared says, I've been seeing this talking point for 3 days. The problem is it's wrong. Trump started rising with his mid-June 15 announcement. Exactly right, Jared. Exactly right. Had taken the lead within a month and had a large lead by late July, mostly maintaining it thereafter. And Jared tagged me. And by the way, Jared's a good account to follow. So he is a Trump supporter, without a doubt. I think it's fair to say. But he's not somebody who screams BS in order to make it sound better for his candidate. This is a load of crap. So let's look at some of the headlines that Jared put up there. Trump leads field in latest poll. Look at the date. All right. That's July 14th. That's a Suffolk University USA Today poll. Let's go back even more. Washington Post. Let's go back to another. July 20th, a week before this point today. Trump surges to big lead in GOP presidential race. Here's August 4th. CBS News poll, Donald Trump leads the GOP race. It was consolidated, and that's a wrap. Here's where you can see, and I'm glad Jared included this. This is the Real Clear Politics average going back to mid-June. Folks, Bush +5. And by the way, who's he +5 over? Scott Walker. Bush +4. Bush +7. Bush +2. And as you can see from that point on, Trump takes the lead and that's it. The debate didn't do anything. It may have solidified some of Trump's support, but at the end of the day, Donald Trump maintained a lead over the field once he announced. It was his announcement that triggered the change in the polling, which is not polling that is even remotely comparable to what we see now for two reasons. This is getting so tiresome, it's actually making me angry. So let's go to what I say in response to Jared's, because when somebody's right, they're right, and they deserve to be told they're right. He is 100% correct. But aside from the claim being false, folks, as a matter of timing, it's just not comparable. Nobody led at or above 50% in 2016 ever. Forget about 30 to 40 plus point leads. That's two arguments there, not one. The former alone, at or above 50%, carries statistical significance that most of these people, including research analysts at Heritage, don't seem to understand. Stay in your damn lane. The latter carries historical significance most of them clearly don't understand as well. The former, being at or above 50%, is statistical significance. The latter, with the size of the lead, is historically significant. And it's not just polling. This is a spinoff of the normal argument we've been hearing now for months. Endorsements. I hate to break it to everybody who doesn't know what they're talking about, but only national and gubernatorial offices have significant predictive value. I strongly suggest some of these influencers and research fellows read the book, The Party Decides. It is ancient history to somebody like me, but I actually studied this, unlike everybody else who thinks they're an expert. The Party Decides is a book, a seminal work that argues that the party, in fact, does decide. The endorsements give you, and Laura's over there, the endorsements have predictive value. What endorsements have predictive value is the next question. But really no debate over whether or not there's a relationship between the amount of endorsements a candidate has, my Lord, and, I'm sorry, Laura, the amount of endorsements candidates have and who inevitably becomes the nominee. And there has been a ton of research after to try to fine-tune the predictive value of these endorsements. It doesn't seem, and I'm being generous here, that anybody is familiar with this research yet. They go on Twitter, they write their little articles on Heritage, they make their little comments on Twitter and every other social media outlet they think they're more important than they are on. And they make these arguments on topics that they don't understand. They're not well researched on, they're not well learned on. I'm not talking about going to college and getting a degree, folks. You don't need to do that like me. You don't need to. Read a book and you'll understand what I'm talking about. As much as I absolutely hate to admit it, there is a good reason why 538, which we're going to trash in the final segment this episode, there is a good reason why they provide scores to different kinds of endorsements. Former presidents and vice presidents get 10 points. National party leaders are also given or weighted 10 points. Governors are given 8 points. U.S. senators are given 6 points. Former presidential and vice presidential nominees, former national party leaders, 2024 presidential candidates who have dropped out get 5 points. 3 points for U.S. House representatives and mayors of large cities. And I don't agree with everything 538 scores. I don't agree with the weighting system. No, I agree with the weighting system. I don't agree with the points that are allocated, right? So the specific weights I don't agree with. And only 2 points for officials in statewide elective offices, statewide legislative offices. Even if you do it this way and you give DeSantis and other candidates a very favorable weighting system, even though the party decides really doesn't suggest this, although there isn't other research, which, I think it's a new day. It's a new era in politics. And frankly, that's why I have a little bit different opinion on this. But the bottom line is you rack it all up for Ron DeSantis, folks. He's got 41 points. That's it. Donald Trump has 300 points. Why is that? Let's pull up Ballotpedia, and we're going to show you why. Here is an endorsement graphic from Ballotpedia. Ballotpedia is more concerned, of course, with endorsements on the national and gubernatorial level. Because, of course, the research doesn't suggest, it is conclusive that they have predictive value. State and local offices, I'm not trying to trash anyone, or I'm not trying to reduce anyone's, this is not an attack on state, local leaders. The fact of the matter is they do not have much predictive value at all. Local and state endorsements don't hurt, but they don't have significant predictive value. In fact, when you're looking at national and gubernatorial offices, research suggests that they have as much predictive value as actual primary polls themselves. And if we look at who is where, and I read you the points, but here's the actual endorsements. Donald Trump has more congressional endorsements in the state of Michigan alone than Ron DeSantis has nationally across the whole damn country. And what is a major reason for that? Donald Trump took the delegation from Ron DeSantis' own home state of Florida, in which he also has more endorsements than Ron DeSantis has nationally. Do you understand the significance of what I am saying? Senators, which are way up on 538's ranking system, and that's honestly, they're the third highest tier, 6 points. Honestly, I don't really disagree with that. What I disagree with is putting, I would have put House representatives somewhere in the middle of senators and local offices, a little bit higher than in the middle, because locals really don't matter. They just don't. And why? In 2016, at the end of the day, the party decides did hold up to scrutiny in 2016 when it appeared it would not, because Donald Trump was not the party's favored candidate. But what happened is when Trump went through the process, the nomination process, at the end of the day, he really did. He moved the party decides to, he bent the theory from the party decides to his will. And eventually, because everyone saw the handwriting on the wall, he made it true. His winning made it true. It wasn't in the beginning. And a lot of his endorsements were unconventional. Former basketball coaches that carried as much weight as a governor. Crazy stuff like that. The former vice presidential nominee, Sarah Palin, who was beloved still by that wing of the party. Conservatives who were, so he brought them over. Sarah Palin was early, but he was bringing all these very unconventional endorsements. At the end of the day, when he started after South Carolina is when a lot of stuff started to change, even though the Cruz crew and company who now run DeSantis' campaign didn't quit until Indiana. The handwriting was already on the wall, and the endorsements started to come. In the Senate, like I said, 10 endorsements to 0. Even Doug Burgum has more endorsements than Ron DeSantis from the U.S. Senate. Tim Scott, which will matter. This will matter. People, weeks ago when I did the Iowa poll, it's now what, 2 weeks? And Fox News, by the way, same margin. I'm going to be on Jack Posobiec after on Human Events today around 2:05. We're going to talk about this, how it looks like everyone's just copying and pasting our work and not giving us credit for it. It's annoying me. Even using terms like Trump or bust now as if they made that shit up themselves. Come on. This is getting annoying now. And by the way, I'll also be on Gorka at 7:30 tonight. He's filling it on Newsmax. All right, so this will matter. 2 weeks ago, I said Iowa reminded me a little bit of what I saw in 2016 with Marco Rubio. Some of even the same areas where I could see Tim Scott coming up on Ron DeSantis, with the same areas you saw Marco Rubio coming up on not really Trump, because the vote was different, but definitely pulling from Cruz and pulling from people like Jeb Bush. All right. Tim Scott, what I'm seeing with him today reminds me of Marco Rubio in 2016's Iowa caucuses. And then governors, 2 for Trump, 1 for DeSantis, 1 for Mike Pence. I believe it's Stitt, right? Oklahoma? Yeah. Stitt in Oklahoma endorsed Ron DeSantis. Meanwhile, Stitt needed Donald Trump to even win his primary. So how influential is Governor Stitt going to be in Oklahoma when he couldn't even win his own primary last year without Donald Trump? Let's be honest. So overall, God, you guys killing me with these. Overall, and I never show 5 turd fake, but I'm going to today just to give you an idea. This is the graph. This is how I would show it to you. And by the way, I think we are going to put up on People's Pundit Daily. There's going to be a lot of new graphics coming on People's Pundit. I have nowhere else to put them. So for local supporters and stuff, I figured this is where we're just going to change People's Pundit Daily to more of a video and data only platform. Maybe there'll be some opinion writers on there. We have some ideas going on, kicking around. A lot of people ask us if we would publish some of the stuff they write. So I'm thinking, okay, there'll be an opinion piece, then a data area, and the video area from the shows we do. And that's what People's Pundit Daily is going to be from now on, and be basically an archive of data. I'm going to put this up. We're also figuring out how to pull an API from Real Clear Politics based on the Real Clear Politics average. We'll give you a delegate estimation. There'll be actual delegate count estimates when the primaries start to go forward. But right now, we'd like to give you one based on what the polls are before we get to it, because there are others, but I hate to tell you, they're not really factoring in the rules correctly in some of these states. So if maybe they're, and I haven't seen it in the methodology, but maybe they're basically assuming that somebody's going to get above the 15 or 20% threshold in some of these states. We are not going to assume that. If you are not at 15 or 20% in a state where there is a threshold of 15 and 20%, you will not get delegates in this estimate, because that's how it works in real life, folks. And by the way, it only gets worse if you don't win contests. All right. So with all that said and done, that's why it looks like this. And you've seen us use this graphic before. This is how you show somebody the value of an aggregate amount of something. And as you can see here, they have allocated Trump 300 points, DeSantis 41. This is not close. So in our Back on Planet Earth segment again, and there is nothing wrong with the polls, what the endorsements, what the research on endorsements suggests, the polls are right. In fact, what they suggest is that the polls could be underestimating Donald Trump's support, because they are, again, just as predictive as the polls. That is what we have seen. Is every election cycle the same? Of course not. But what this shows is that Trump's 30 to 40 plus point national lead could actually be understated here by the time we get to Iowa. If DeSantis or somebody else does not win the state of Iowa, which does not look very likely at this point, you're going to see this thing blow wide open. Anyway, let's also get into some of the, and this is why I wanted to dovetail from here into some of the other, this other segment, because it's already 12:24. So this is actually going to be a good way, using the rest of this tweet, it's going to be a good way to get into the next segment. It's just getting so annoying to see all this crap. It's really annoying. Why? Because all it's doing is getting big media who hate you ratings, or like they're trying to get clicks and ratings and ad revenue, and the consultants are getting filthy rich. And meanwhile, we have some serious friggin' problems. Tom Bevan put up the average for Real Clear Politics yesterday, and I just couldn't help myself, because no matter what, which is showing that DeSantis is at the lowest point ever since RCP put him in the average, Karl Rove richer. I mean, Jeff Rowe, excuse me. Sorry, same damn person, basically. Rip off the skin. They're both reptile under there. Same damn person. They're way wealthier than they were before this experiment. And some people really just need to come to grips that you were duped. And I'm talking about some of these people out there. We had, Kurt was on Monday. We had a great discussion about this. I mean, this is at this point, it's time to get the smelling salts out. All right, so just taking the polling endorsements together, this is already uncharted territory of a very historically strong candidate. This is not an opinion of mine. This is reality. Add to that Trump is like this unique, and we've been talking about this for months, this unique kind of a hybrid candidate where he's like a Grover Cleveland incumbent, but still an insurgent. Like, he's got qualities of both, which, by the way, also did not exist in 2016. There was no candidate like that. And we're dealing with something else. This is not just another early primary leader. This is something totally different, much stronger. And then there's the money situation, which, before we get into this, I told us to take these quarterly breaks. You know what? Yeah, let's do that. This way I don't slam it all into one thing. When we come back, we'll get into why the money situation is the same as the polling and the endorsement situation. It is not really true that Ron DeSantis outraised Trump and other candidates last quarter. That's not really true. There was a new report from Axios yesterday, and we could go over it. But the bottom line is, even Vivek Ramaswamy, Tim Scott, basically everybody has more of a percentage of small dollar donors than Ron DeSantis. That's already one big, big red flag, but it's more than that. They have a chunk of what they reported in the bank, not even able to use for the primary. So when you're saying, oh, we outraised them, it's not really true, because that money it's a bunch of donors, not small dollar donors, but not quite mega donors. There are mega donors in there, but they keep using this phrase mega donor incorrectly. You donate $5,000 to a campaign, you are not a mega donor. All right. You are just you're a donor. You're kind of, you could be considered, you're not a low dollar donor, but you're not a mega donor. You're not going to write a check for $250,000, $1.5 million, $500,000 to a super PAC. That there are a lot of people who give $5,000, give the max for the primary, give the max for the general. And what we saw is there were a lot of them who have now maxed out for DeSantis in the primary and the general election. And if you subtract the amount of money that they claim they raised for this primary, if you subtract that amount that can be used only in a general, then in fact Trump outraised DeSantis. And you would do that. Plus, Trump did not play games with his books. I'm not paying my vendors this month. I'm going to wait until next month so it doesn't look bad on my quarterly filing. That happens a lot. But from what we've been hearing and what we've been digging up, this was excessive. So the DeSantis campaign skipped, and all candidate campaigns do this. They skip paying some bills in order to make it look like they had more money. This was, while that is not uncommon, apparently how much they skipped is ridiculous. So again, a lot of this is, I don't want to say a sham, but a lot of what we've heard is turning out to be incredibly misleading. And this is pointing to really a campaign that's on life support. And we'll talk more about this when we get back from the break. All right. All right, folks. Oh my God. If Florida, you better dodge a bullet. I was just watching something about Irma. I really hope Florida does not get hit with a hurricane this year. This is pre-ad rich talk. The insurance issue in Florida is serious. And so is just the economic pain a lot of people are feeling, even though Florida is by far doing better than some of these other states. But my God, folks, I really hope that Florida dodges the bullet, the proverbial bullet this year. But listen, it could be complete incompetence from our leaders, just like this. And also, authorities do fear that extremists are targeting the U.S. power grid. There's an article in Time magazine about it just a few weeks ago. But if it doesn't matter what it's from. If 9 key substations were to go down, it would knock out power across the country for up to 18 months. Your life, my life, they'd all be frozen in time at the moment the power went out. That's why I got one, and that's why you need a solar generator. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, for your loved ones or yourself, even your refrigerator. Make sure that food doesn't go bad. And right now, you can get one at 4patriots.com for 10% off if you use the code TPP10 at checkout. This code is for your first purchase only. That's why you should make it count on an item that you need like this. That's 4patriots.com. Use the code TPP10 and go get yourself a Patriot Power Generator today. They have great deals with the panels running right now. Strongly suggest, especially if you're in one of those high-risk areas, but we're all at risk at this moment in history. We are all at risk. Again, 4patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10. And thank you for the assist on that, Laura. Thank you for the assist. All right. Rather than me just ramble on, I want to read you something first. And when I read to you, we'll come back and we'll talk more about we'll talk more about in detail. Come on with this crap. Isn't there no way? Like, it's bad enough that the ads just play over what you're trying to do, but there we go. I hate it when it doesn't allow you to stop it until a certain point, All right. The question was whether or not DeSantis would be able to re-up his money because his low dollar contributions are so low. He has no grassroots support. As of this moment, what they decided to do was just cut and go back to those who have not maxed out yet. They did not attempt to expand his appeal into the grassroots. Did it work? Well, sure as hell, cutting people is going to work. I feel bad for a lot of these staffers. In case you did not see the report yesterday, we're now beyond a dozen staff members. He literally cut at least a third of his entire campaign across the board. And what's sad is that these people have this on their resume now, and they're being blamed. You have people like Jenna Ellis. This girl is just a disgrace to all social media. She's a nobody until somebody makes her something she's not. I don't even know why Trump hired that woman she has no expertise in election law whatsoever. And then you have people say things like her and others, what's wrong with firing people who don't perform? That's a really, really crappy thing to do. And it also reaffirms and reinforces what people believe the DeSantis campaign is. A bunch of nasty ass people who don't accept responsibility for their failures. These people are not the reason Ron DeSantis is failing. Those who are still have their jobs. Other people were cut at the lower levels in order to continue paying these fat slobs who don't do their jobs correctly. And to have these fake ass influencers go on Twitter and kind of blame them for it is terrible. Just terrible. Some of them were replaced and retransplanted to Never Back Down and other, quote, third-party groups. When you hear that, it means a PAC that big donors who are still willing can still give money to because of obviously they're not governed by limits and disclosures. I just think it's a really crummy thing to do to try to claim that you're somehow doing this because you're a strong leader and you're cutting the waste or something. Like you're cutting the lack of talent. It's not the lower level people's fault that you let fat cat consultants spend all your money because you're an idiot and you spend $1,400 on like slob gas station chicken sandwiches. Like that's not their fault. And that you fell, you've bled 50% of your support since the height of your campaign. That's not their fault. Those people worked hard. They probably gave it their all. And for anyone who's ever worked on a major campaign, you know what I'm talking about. Those people at the bottom give it their all. And they unfortunately suffer because of the mistakes from the top. And at the end of the day, the candidate is the boss of the campaign. He is the CEO of the campaign. So you can blame people all you want, but the buck stops with you if you let Jeff Rose spend too much money. If you paid a walking firm money to brag about $100 million you're going to sink into a ground game that is currently being sued right now for faking data. And now you're surprised that you didn't knock on 200,000 doors in Iowa like you thought? That's your fault. Poor staffers at the bottom who are being blamed in the media. It's terrible. Ron DeSantis' Hamptons fundraiser flops, while RFK and Trump rake it in. Ron DeSantis scrapped not one, but two Hampton fundraisers last weekend because of a lack of interest. While rival Donald Trump and upstart Robert Kennedy Jr. raked in massive piles of cash, sources told On the Money. The tale of the three fundraisers shows DeSantis' hopes for snaring the Republican nomination are quickly fading as Trump dominates the GOP field and RFK gains momentum. I'm not sure I'm seeing the momentum in the polling for RFK. Is there some areas where he's grabbing on? Yeah, but until he breaks into the actual progressive Democrat lane, it's going to be hard because of the way that, look, it's just easy for the White House to get the party to do its bidding, and they did. They screwed over Iowa. They screwed over New Hampshire. They changed history. So Joe Biden doesn't have a real campaign challenge. They put South Carolina first because they think black Democrats are the dumbest Democrats out there and that they can get them to remain loyal to Joe Biden when others are not. They're front-loading closed contests so they don't have to worry about independents and more moderate voters voting for RFK. And that is a very, very heavy lift to get over. This weekend broke DeSantis' campaign, one political fundraiser said. I don't know anyone who went, added longtime GOP fundraiser Caroline Wren. You might have seen me quote tweet her on Twitter because what she was saying, Caroline knows what she's doing. She's been around a long time. She went on with Bannon the other day to explain the situation because not everybody's a fundraiser. Not everybody knows this world. This is much worse than you're being told. They are literally trying to grift week after week to get this guy 6 months from now. He's not going to make it to Iowa if this keeps up. You hearing it from me right now. Ron DeSantis will not make it to Iowa if this continues. And I've heard and I've been told by people who jumped ship from Trump and went to go work for him that he'll just get bludgeoned. He's not going to quit. He's not going to get out. He'll just get killed first. That's so sad because that means the consultant class has convinced him to do that. Why? So the paychecks can still come for them. But he'll go back to he'll go back to being worse than a lame duck governor in Florida with no political clout. The legislature, who was once very deferent to him, will run all over him. This has happened before. This is what happens. And maybe a future campaign for Senate or whatever will just be down the drain. He doesn't, again, folks, what I'm trying to explain to you, he doesn't have low dollar contributions. So he has no way to get any more money. That's it. And there's nobody's got allegiance to him. I mean, as Laura just said, there's like no people don't feel an allegiance to him right now. And what I'm trying to say is, and Laura, that's what Laura just said, there's no grassroots allegiance to him. And what I'm trying to explain back is that what this article from the New York Post, and by the way, we're hearing this. How do you think I knew what I knew? I knew because these people who are running away from him told me. That's how I knew. If you're losing the mega donors, which he lost, and you're losing the big donors, but they're not like mega donors. Caroline was absolutely right about that. The way they're being phrased is just ridiculous in an attempt to make him sound like he's stronger than he is. You don't get the $5,000 donors anymore, the $2,000 donors, $3,000 donors. You're in a lot of trouble because you don't have low dollar. And stick with it, because after this article, I'm going to show you exactly how dire the situation is with the grassroots. As On the Money previously reported, and by the way, Caroline Wren said George Santos could have pulled off a better fundraising swing in the Hamptons than Ron DeSantis this past weekend. That is a brutal comment. As On the Money previously reported, DeSantis had cut in half from $6,600 per person to $3,300, the price to attend the July 20 fundraiser in Southampton. Nobody went. It had to be canceled. There was no interest. But despite being discounted and heavily promoted, and the New York Republican group sending email blasts the day before the event, attendance was overwhelming. A source with knowledge of the campaign told On the Money. I have been told, and you're going to hear it from me, from the People's Pundit first, a fundraiser in Texas will also be canceled because nobody wants to attend. A planned fundraiser is dead in the water. They were sending emails. They had party people helping who are, even though Trump is way ahead in Texas, there is absolutely, as you can see what's going on with Paxton right now, there is absolutely a pro-DeSantis, anti-Trump wing in Texas, and it just fell flat. Nobody answered. I had one donor tell me, are they serious with this? Is this a joke? One source blamed Chile Fale, a failed congressional candidate who promoted herself as the point person behind DeSantis' cocktail reception. Oh, give me a break. $3,300 to meet a supposed top-tier candidate for president is a bargain deal. It costs 30 to 50 grand to get a picture with Donald Trump at an event, folks. She cheapened the event by sending it out to everyone on her email list. She scared people away, a top donor told On the Money. Donors don't want to show up to a cocktail reception that's been advertised to tens of thousands of people. What a load of crap. Big money backers like Ken Griffin and Steven Schwartzman stayed away altogether. So that's a real Ken Griffin. That's a real mega donor. Schwartzman, that's a real big donor. But this wasn't even trying to appeal to people like them only. This was an attempt to get like a John Duarte kind of donor. I'll give you $5,000 if you back a congressional campaign of mine. Worse yet, the campaign canceled plans for 2 other events because they, quote, couldn't find hosts. Was that Farley's fault too? A source with knowledge told On the Money. The DeSantis experiment is dead, one source said. Donors aren't coming to his events because they don't see any return on investment. DeSantis' campaign did not reveal how much the Florida governor's foray into the Empire State raised. Representatives for DeSantis did not return On the Money request for comment. I will tell you right now, I had 3 people last week call me from a single securities firm, which you all know, and asked me what I thought. And I honestly told them, this is dead. You will waste your money. They they like Trump's policies, but they kind of wanted to move on from Trump. And they were absolutely gung-ho about Ron DeSantis 3 months ago. And that was the end of that. It didn't take much convincing. Not that I was even intending to do that. People call me and ask me my opinion. I gave them my honest opinion. While DeSantis struggled to find an audience, Democratic presidential hopeful RFK Jr. was the buzz of the East End, mainly from Republicans hoping to boost the long shot chances of beating Joe Biden in the primaries. I'm telling you, Republicans, I understand what they're doing, but they better be careful what they wish for, because RFK would be a real problem for Donald Trump. Mark my words. His fundraiser in Sag Harbor, hosted by investment banker Omid Malik at the swanky restaurant Bilbake, reached its max of 30 attendees several weeks before the event. The campaign decided to add another event in Southampton for earlier that day to meet the overwhelming demand. All attendees gave the maximum amount of $6,600 an individual can donate to presidential campaigns. So now he's got both covered, helping RFK Jr. score his largest single-day haul. The dinner conversation centered around foreign policy, cryptocurrency, and RFK Jr.'s congressional testimony on censorship. Remember that? Last week. In the days following his testimony, he raised $5 million from several donors on the money has learned. Listen, he did fantastic on Sean Hannity. I'm just going to tell you right now. Anybody else see it? He did fantastic. And his family is the Kennedy family. He may single-handedly destroy what's left of their name, because they look like the biggest scumbag pieces of shit ever in the political ruling class. And if you're a regular, average, everyday normie, you got to be looking at these scumbag, tea and crumpet eating slobs and ask yourself, if they're willing to throw their own blood under the bus so they can maintain an invitation for tea and crumpets every Friday night, what are they willing to do to you? How much pain and suffering are they willing to put you through if their social status is worth more than their own blood? Disgusting what they're doing to him. A source added that RFK is already planning another fundraiser in New York next week on the heels of his Hampton success. Trump, meanwhile, steered clear of his native state, but raked in some serious cash in a small town in North Carolina over the weekend. According to multiple sources, and I know this is true, the former president raised more than $2 million. He did. Trump's event was hosted by the Joint Fundraising Committee rather than his campaign. While donors can't give more than $6,600 to a candidate, they can donate far more to the PAC. The continued support for the former president, who was running away in the polls, doesn't bode well for DeSantis' once promising run for the Oval Office. As Robert Barnes and I told you months ago, back to the midterms ago, this is hype. This is not real. It was never promising. They're starting to look at other places, Wren said. Some are looking at Tim Scott. Some are turning to RFK Jr. And some in the GOP are coming home to Trump. I can tell you one out of the three is going back to Donald Trump, who I spoke to last week. And this is a major securities and investment firm. One is going back to Donald Trump. Tim Scott, they all told me, and I have heard this before from many different people. Tim Scott, they said it's a revolving door for Tim Scott over here, and has been for a long time. So Wall Street apparently has had a very responsive relationship with Tim Scott. His position in the Senate makes him a very well sought after senator for people like them to get attention to. You want an economic or competitive advantage? Go to Tim Scott. You need somebody to tell the SEC to get off your back? Go to Tim Scott. I don't know how responsive he's been to the citizens of South Carolina, but he's been very responsive to these people. I was shocked at how responsive he has been, and I just was not aware of the significance of that. So why is this a big deal? If DeSantis cannot raise money from these people anymore, and he's got the added problem already of not, forget about willingness or unwillingness, folks, he has the added problem of most of his supporters have already given the max. Not only for the primary, most of them have already given it for the general. He's tapped. He tapped them out. There is no more beer coming out of that spigot. That leaves Grassroots and the lower dollar. That leaves Grassroots with low dollar, and then not mega donors and not like super rich, but people who give in the several thousands. Well, the mega donors have been fleeing. as you've seen report after report. His attempt these last 2 weeks to get those lower level but still big, big donors, I don't know what, to call them, that failed. And here we are on the small dollar donation ratio. He's at the bottom of the field here, folks. Francis Suarez, 3.1% of his haul, which wasn't even a big haul, came from small dollar donations that are 200 or less. 82% of Donald Trump's fundraising came from low dollar contributions. Eat that, Bernie. That is a sustainable campaign. These people have not maxed out. They can go back and give them another $50, another $100, another $75, but whatever. That is a healthy fundraising apparatus. Vivek Ramaswamy, 57.5, 58%. Hell, even Chris Christie, slightly more than a third at 35%, came from small dollar donors. Mike Pence, one of the most hated candidates in the grassroots, 31%. Tim Scott, 30%. Like I just told you, he is without a doubt a Wall Street favorite. But yet, 3 out of 10 still came from 200 or less. Nikki Haley, 29%. Will Hurd, a nobody, 20%. And below Will Hurd, rounding out with Asa Hutchinson and Doug Burgum at 17, 14, and 13% is Ron DeSantis. That will only continue to get worse, as has always been the trend with campaigns that are flailing like his are, unless he breaks into the grassroots. That is not likely to happen with all of this word spreading that I told you was true anyway. If you watch Inside the Numbers, you know it's true. His brain trust, they're out of ideas. The indictments didn't hurt Trump. That was his entire strategy. It was his entire strategy. I have been getting an earful for months. But the major question last week in that phone call I'm telling you about was, is there any indictment that will hurt him? Will a succession of indictments hurt him? To which I replied what I've replied to you guys all the time. It's already baked into the cake. That's what the evidence suggests as of right now. Is it possible some fatigue happens? Sure, I guess, because anything's really possible. But that's not what is being suggested right now. Right now, what's being suggested is that people expected the Department of Justice and the administrative state, Joe Biden, to use them to pull the levers of power in an effort to stop Donald Trump. Whatever support he has lost from it, he has made up for by picking up people that know what persecution is. People you never would think would ever support Donald Trump, yet here they are. There is not going to be some explosion of grassroots support for Ron DeSantis after Trump is indicted over January 6th, after he's indicted by Georgia. I mean, this, folks, stop. Wait until he's not even a candidate yet. Wait until he announces. Wait until he campaigns, Laura. It's only a matter of time. And then you have this idiot from the Heritage Foundation. Wait till this debate happens. Ron DeSantis is a terrible debater. Even if Trump shows up, he's a terrible debater. He is not a very personable guy. He's not a likable guy. He's not a good debater. Andrew Gillum wiped the floor with him. Anyway, so there you have it. Florida governor is lagging far behind Donald Trump in a crucial metric for the longevity of a presidential campaign. Small dollar donations. There is no metric. Going back, there's an overlapping segment from the first one. Going back to the first segment, there is no metric where Donald Trump is being beaten by anybody, let alone Ron DeSantis. on every metric for predictive value, for who's going to win, who's the longevity of a campaign. When it comes to assessing presidential campaigns, presidential nominations, there isn't a single metric where Donald Trump is not ahead. Why it matters. Donations of $200 or less are one of the clearest signals of grassroots enthusiasm behind a candidate. These donors are able to give more than once, while wealthy donors often max out on their contributions early in the campaign. The full picture of Trump's finances isn't clear, as filing so far suggests strong grassroots support. By the numbers, 82% from the start of the year came from small dollar donors. And an attempt, by the way, by the DeSantis campaign to say he's using his money for his political defense has fallen flat. Why? For two reasons. One, it says, go to donate to Donald Trump and you will see it. I looked. It is a disclosure. I have to use some of this for my defense. Two, people don't see that's unfair. Quite the opposite. I didn't quote her correctly on Monday's show when I was talking to Kurt Schlichter about it, but the woman in New Hampshire we had interviewed that I was talking about with Kurt Schlichter, she said she doesn't mind because, and then she said two things which are interesting. One is she didn't mind because it's like, if it wasn't for him standing up for us, he wouldn't be facing the rest of his life in jail. So I don't really care if he uses some of my $50 to pay his lawyers. He's only in this position because he's the only politician who cares about us. That's number one. And I think that she articulated a position that most of his supporters have. Secondly, on the topic of, well, then you should want DeSantis to be the nominee if you don't want him to spend time in jail. She said something, I did not properly attribute her to this, and I should have. She's the one who put that in my mind when she said, why would you want, if you were Donald Trump, why would you not want to be responsible for your own destiny? So if he loses, at least then he loses. And then if he does get put in prison, it was him who was fighting. It was like he wasn't relying on somebody else to win an election for him to keep him out of jail. And then why on earth, if you're a Republican, would you even think that that was fair or the right thing to do? He is entitled to fight his own battle. I guess that's different than saying he's entitled to the nomination. She sees it a different way. I'm not talking about the nomination as a byproduct of this fight. I don't know. I don't know how you separate those things. I'm still trying to figure it out on my own, but I can understand what she's saying. It's his life. He should be the one, win or lose, who gets to fight for it. Especially since, in the mind of his supporters, and this I do understand, he's only there because he's only facing this because he really stood up for them. That's why he has small dollar donations and nobody else does. Not at this level. Some of these Republican candidates are making Hillary Clinton look like a grassroots candidate. I kid you not. Now, you could say there wasn't as crowded of a field in 2016 against Bernie, but this is why she lost Michigan to Bernie out of nowhere. This is why, Ohio and Pennsylvania were a tougher fight. She just couldn't shake him off because he had low dollar contributions. Longevity is the name of the game in a presidential campaign. The DeSantis campaign, the whole damn time, touted their ability to run a better operation, to hire better people, to build a national organization. Nothing they claimed is coming true. Nothing. Everything they claim they could do better is incorrect. Am I wrong? Lord, am I wrong? Everything. I'm going to hire better people. You hire Jeff Rowe, the king of the loser club. You're doing the same. It's the definition of insanity. You're going to build a ground game nobody's ever seen before, but yet you hire the same firms that have cost Republican candidates victories year after year. It's so easy to blame Donald Trump for their underperformance in 2022 because if they can blame Donald Trump, which they did and successfully did for at least 2 months, that's over now, I think. But if you can successfully blame Donald Trump for those losses, then you can defer or you can redirect the responsibility that should fall on you for faking data, for taking giant checks from congressional candidates and not doing your job. Which, by the way, Laura herself, our Laura, caught a firm doing. It's the same one. By the way, it's the same one. That's the same firm, Laura. The one you caught faking responses for David, it's the same firm. It's the same firm, right? Shocker. Shocker. And the RNC only has like 2 approved walking firms. That's why for years, starting with this year, I actually thought about starting one of my own. First of all, make a fortune because everyone knows they suck. Markets, fair market, free and fair market, baby. Let's see who does a better job. So, a lot of great comments, a lot of great stuff here. There's just something else I got to bring. It's already 1:01. Where are you? All of this coming as, like I said, here is one that has been, wouldn't say it's Trump bullish, but I would say that it is now getting Trump bullish. This is the new for the week morning consult after Trump dipped back down again to 56, something like that, 54. He is now back up to 59, and DeSantis has fallen to 16, which if you slumps to weekly tracking low. There's also something that has been a very death knell to the coffin of Ron DeSantis, which has been his electability argument has completely fallen apart. All right. Former President Donald Trump began as, that's another reason. Forget about what Linda said, Laura, in New Hampshire. What about, not Linda. Linda was the other woman. It starts with an L. I'd have to go back and look. Forget about what she was saying about that part of it. She also said, and why would you have this? Since nobody believes he's a stronger candidate against Biden. Nobody thinks he is. And that has borne out to be true everywhere. In every survey, everywhere, every Republican, no matter what, indictments and all, they think Donald Trump is a stronger candidate. And by the way, they are becoming, the data is really starting to mount on that. It's not just us anymore. We obviously sparked this conversation about the Trump or bust vote. Other pollsters are looking at it now, and they are seeing what we're seeing. And even left-wing university pollsters are being forced to come out and use the term and say that is the case, because it is. That's right. They have no choice, right? They can pretend to ban me from their stupid little websites all they want. They all follow and ride my you-know-what. Former President Donald Trump began his presidential campaign with the bulk of the Republican electorate behind him, and a number of contenders are looking to put his grip to the test ahead of the 2024 nominating contest. Morning consult surveys are tracking the Republican primary electorate's views of Trump and other candidates, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the bottom line is a key metric for a party looking to turn the tide on recent electoral disappointments is how he and Florida Governor DeSantis fare against Joe Biden. Trump has a huge lead, number one. DeSantis performs poorly against Biden, number two, and Vivek Ramaswamy is getting good buzz. What they mean by that is they ask every week whether or not they've heard positive or negative news about each candidate, and that's what you have. Here's the track over time. This is it's remarkable. But let's even go to because I don't want to spend too much time on that. Let's go to another one. And because we know, I'm sure everyone's seen the morning consult poll before. Let's go to the Messenger poll on Messenger. The Messenger is done by Harris X. Like us, Harris X was one of few to accurately predict the popular vote in 2020. All right, they had a Biden +4. We had a Biden +4. Trump edges ahead of Biden in the new poll. This is after the latest indictment news dropped. So after voters were told again that Trump would be indicted again. 2 seconds. Puff break, puff break. Barnes does it. Quit, she says. Quit. I'm working on it, Laura. Former President Donald Trump took a narrow lead over President Joe Biden in the latest Messenger Harris poll conducted by Harris X. Trump led Biden 46-42, while 12% were undecided. The online survey, taking July 1st to 24th, among 922 registered voters, had a margin of error plus or minus 3.2. For Democrats, and this is what I took from this as well, the poll represents a frustrating reality about Trump's support. Regardless of the chaos, judicial jeopardy, and general noise level surrounding his candidacy, his share of the vote is stable. While we live in terrifying times, ladies and gentlemen, and it is, we are at risk of no longer being able to pick our own leaders in 2024. The 2024 election will not just decide who the president is. The 2024 election will decide whether or not we are still able to pick our own leaders. If they are, I don't care what you think of Donald Trump. This is your reality. If they are successful in taking out Donald Trump with lawfare, you have lost all ability to self-govern your own country. Because anytime a candidate comes up that stands up for you, that is against the status quo of the administrative state, they will do one of two things. They will try lawfare. If lawfare is not an option, they will kill them. They have already done it. Lee Harvey Oswald, give me a break. These are dire, dire, dire times in this country. However, as terrifying as it is still a very interesting time for someone like me. Psephology, polling, election forecasting, whether you study it, whatever. Very interesting time for those like us to be alive. Because this is just not normal. No matter what they do to this guy, they just can't deteriorate his support. It's remarkable. The United States at this moment in history has a chance to really show that they are the beacon of self-governance. Or they have a chance to fall the flattest any society has ever fallen. Trump has 88% support of Republicans, while Biden only has 84% of Democrats. Independents back Trump 42-34. It's an 8-point lead. In the Harvard-Harris poll, Trump had an 18-point lead with independents. 24% said they didn't know who they'd support. You know why I know that this poll is legit? That right there. Anytime you see a poll where independents are like decided and pick a candidate, it's bogus. Especially this early, independents don't pick like that. They don't do that. Partisans at this early in the game themselves will be 10 to 15% unsure about their own base of support. And when it comes to independents, you routinely will see a quarter to a third undecided at this point. Even though most independents in reality do lean to one party or another. Most polls overstate the share of true independent votes. But you just will not see, you're seeing like Monmouth, that one that came out a week or so ago. They're not that decided at this point. You picked only high interest voters, and it is not a very good poll, which we're going to talk about, by the way, in a little bit. It's 110. Anyway, going down the list, men back Trump 52-39, women back Biden 46-41. Among age groups, Biden's strongest was 18 to 34, while Trump's strongest was 65 and over. Voters are still dissatisfied with both Trump and Biden. 66% of voters said they don't want Biden to run for a second term, including 38% of Democrats. 55% of voters don't want Trump to run either, including 27% of Republicans. Well, guess what? In a rematch, that's a Trump win. I'm not sure in a perfect self-governing society it even matters whether you have like examples like that. And it certainly doesn't really have very much predictive value, does it? Biden's job approval numbers remain steady but low. 41% of voters said they approve Joe Biden's job as president. I don't know how the hell ABC, or who was it? Somebody had like 28%. I don't know how you would do that. We just don't live in an era where partisans collapse like that anymore. While 53% said they disapprove. Voters who approve the most of Biden are, of course, Democrats, black voters, and voters age 18 to 34. That black voter approval is a big warning sign. Big warning sign. It's terrible. But it is also pretty much where we've seen him in the last couple of polls. All right. Before we do anything, I do want to talk about 538's latest scam and how the next expose on what a fake 538 is, and then this terrible, improper treatment of pollsters in this very tribal age where some are held to completely different standards than others. It's totally bogus. Totally bogus. We'll show that. But before we do, let's take another quick break, and we'll be back after this latest word from our next sponsor. What am I missing here, Laura? Don't forget, after the show today, 2:05, I'll be on with Jack on Human Events, Jack Poso. And what else, Laura? What am I missing? 7:30 tonight, Newsmax. So just start watching at 7. Newsmax, Sebastian Gorka filling in pre-prime time, and I'll be on there to join Seb to talk about all the latest polls and everything. All right, free shipping on coffee subscriptions, but so much more than that. If you go to our friends at Jam and Bean right now, use the promo code TPP40 on a new subscription, and you will get 40% off right off the top. Plus, you'll still get 10% off on every subsequent renewal. Our friends at Jam and Bean are patriots who fought against the COVID tyranny in the state of Michigan, but they also happen to be fantastic at their job. It is an art to roast coffee correctly like this. And these guys are great at it. As always, send us your feedback because we love to hear from it. Their gourmet popcorn is incredible. We got a lot of great feedback from that as well. But a lot more people have been grabbing up on that coffee and trying different I haven't been disappointed yet with different flavors. And I'm a picky coffee guy, right, Laura? I'm like a specific kind of dark roast kind of guy, and I don't really like anything else, much else. But when it comes to Jam and Bean, their medium full bodies are incredible, and I love everything they've sent to me. Also have incredible teas, which Laura's starting to get me into. Go to Jam and Bean, JAMN Bean.com. Use the promo code TPP40 at checkout and send us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. But you will get 40% off your initial subscription right off the jump. And every month you'll still get 10% off just from using that code and being a People's Pundit viewer, watcher, listener, subscriber, whatever fan. All right, again, jamandbean.com, promo code TPP40. And again, send us your feedback. We want to hear from you. So 115, I'm going through this Monmouth poll that somebody had sent me. Of course, it's so funny that all of these critics, I'm sorry you don't want to hear about your own campaign sucking, but that's what my job is, to tell my viewers the truth. Using like 5-turd fake and like the New York Times and the Washington Post to attack me. It's so funny. Like, these are Republicans, supposedly. That's hilarious. And I'm going through it, though, because Monmouth is definitely in the DeSantis bullish category. they still had, along with YouGov, still had Trump in like the 40s when others had him approaching 60. You still had DeSantis at like 30 and 32 and 34% when others had him very clearly about to fall into the teens. So that's where they are. And yet this comes out, and I'm going through the methodology, and boom, there it is. If you remember correctly, even Nate Silver, trying to salvage what little bit he has of his reputation, came out against 538's attempt to try to ban Rasmussen, like they banned us and Patrick and others. And by the way, they banned Robert Cahaley in 2020 as well, but from Trafalgar. But there was blowback, and they have friends I don't have, so nobody rushed to my aid, right? But they unbanned Trafalgar. That was Nate's decision, by the way, to ban him. So don't go thinking Nate Silver is some friggin' hero, because he's not, right? But everybody piled on 538 when they tried to ban Rasmussen. All of us pollsters talk. We all really do. And I remember when they first got the email, the first line of emails, which came to be number of emails from the schmuck at ABC, questioning, just asking these very inappropriate questions. Some were appropriate questions about methodology, but they were mixed in with these inappropriate questions. So, my advice to Mark would be, if you do answer them, which I would have probably if it was me, but then again, I did answer them, and I made the mistake of thinking that they were asking these questions in good faith, and they were not asking these questions in good faith. They were just full of crap, and I have the email threads to prove it. But once you get on their target list, you get, threatened to get banned, you will get banned. And that didn't happen with Rasmussen because everybody jumped on them. Even their old boss, Nate Silver. Anyway, I'm going through one of the questions that they had been asking had to do with Rasmussen's use of online samplings to balance for IVR. A lot of people do samplings, right? But what are you doing? Are you using propensity modeling or scoring to factor for the propensity for some people to be online before others? And all these are like questions that really, some are legitimate, but they were just mixed in with BS, along with, you're repeat interviewing people? And that was, I'll tell you right now, the reason why the 2016 tracker we did was not aggregated. And to all the people we submitted it, HuffPo, the HuffPolster, 538, Real Clear Politics, everyone had told us it's because you're repeat interviewing people. And the point we had said with the national poll was that that's the experiment. We're actually conducting an experiment here to show people that this is response bias. So the wild swings you're seeing in the 2012 polling, for instance, they're not real. That is a response bias, that in truth, Americans' views don't change all that much at all. And if you design a large sample to be representative of the entire electorate, just a smaller version, like a miniature model, you will see that the opinions will only shift the results, folks, 2 to 4, 2 to 6, net swings that you do not see. These big swings from like Romney +4 to Obama +7, that shit isn't real. That's a response bias. Anyway, then they jumped on Rasmussen for potentially re-interviewing people because Rasmussen has a house list that they're using to IVR, to reach people on our IVR. All right. And then I'm reading this and I'm going through. First of all, let's watch this. They say Monmouth poll was sponsored and conducted by the Monmouth University Polling Institute, July 12th to July 19th, 2023. And by the way, why the hell did they just release this now? It's 7 days ago. Okay. With a probability-based national sample of 681 registered voters who identify with or lean toward the Republican Party. We don't do that. We ask a series of screens to determine whether or not, in our national polling, to determine whether or not somebody is eligible and likely and eligible to participate in the primary. Every state has different rules. I mean, some rules are very similar, but depending on the state, somebody may not be eligible. My submission to you here is that Monmouth is not a very sophisticated poll at all. If you're just asking people what they think, are you going to do it? Then you're definitely including people who are not eligible to vote in the primary. And you're probably excluding people who are. But there could be very good explanations for some of the things I'm going to bring up right now. My larger point, is that 538 didn't jump all over Monmouth like they jumped all over Rasmussen. And honestly, I don't know what that good explanation could be, although I'm open to hearing it. But right now, it is basically incoherent. That is the word I used when I was talking to Mark yesterday about this. This is incoherence. It doesn't make, and to another pollster like me, it makes very little sense why they chose to do certain things. All right. Interviews were conducted in English. And why? Why just English? It's a national poll. There are Spanish-speaking Republicans, a growing number of them, in Florida, Texas, Nevada, Arizona, and California. Together, they make up a pretty good share of a national sample. Anyway, they included 198 live landline telephone interviews. Those will skew better to Ron DeSantis than others, although Trump is winning these people anyway. They do skew to it. 236 live cell phone interviews, which could be younger, which would help Trump, by the way. Trump is just doing better with younger voters. 237 online surveys via a cell phone text invitation, which we do a lot of as well. You know that. And 10 online surveys via an email invitation. 10? Where the hell did this number come from? How many invitations did you send out? And what was 10? Like I always tell you all the time, we sent out 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 invitations to online. The completion rate is 98%. It came from Lucid, a Cint company, whatever it may be, right? And we mostly get our stuff from a voter file, and we use Aristotle. They're using Dynata for their online sample. But where did this 10 come from? And if you're saying a probability-based national random sample, that's not really true, is it? Telephone numbers were selected through a mix of random digital dialing and list-based sampling. Well, then it's one or the other, kiddos. Or you're going to have to explain like Emerson does. For instance, you have a overall sampling error. And some of your polling really isn't random at all, is it? And so certainly some of it's not probability-based. You're modeling based off of a list you pulled off of Aristotle. Aristotle models it for you. Why would you do that? I don't know. I mean, there may be good answers. I'm just saying, this is crazy. This is like a throw shit against the wall to see what sticks kind of methodology. And that's fine if you have a good reason to do it. Again, though, the point is, why was Rasmussen almost banned for not answering questions when you have something like this? Get this. I'm not even done. We're not even done there yet because I'm not. Telephone numbers were selected through a mix of random digital dialing and list-based sampling. You shouldn't need one or the other. You shouldn't need both. There are people who, like me, who have been arguing that list-based sampling is far more superior. Random digital dial is a dinosaur. Landline respondents were selected with a modified Troll-Carter youngest adult household screen. Troll-Carter method is when you call a household and you ask for the youngest adult in the house, youngest who is registered to vote. Interviewing services, but that goes against, hold on, let me just stop there. That goes against the point of pulling a list-based sample, which you can randomize alone off of Aristotle. This makes no sense. I don't know why you would do that. The random digital dial you would do it for. But again, I don't know. Interviewing services were provided by Braun Research with sample obtained from Dynata. RDD is random digital dial. They got the random digital dial sample from Dynata. Again, I'm not sure why. Dynata does panel providing mostly. They do have call centers. You can hire them to do call centers. And they got 232 responses from Dynata. The Aristotle list that they pulled, which we don't know the size of because they don't provide it, they got 335 responses, or 355 responses from. That's fine. And then A panel of prior Monmouth poll participants gave them 94 responses. That's repeat screening. Those are repeat interviews. Why did 538's editor-in-chief, the left-wing hack that he is, jump all over Monmouth for this? Why are they not getting emails threatening to ban them like Rasmussen did? This is why I tell you their stupid little pollster scorecard is garbage. I have outperformed everybody. Nobody has my record. Nobody. Even in my worst cycles, I still get closer than most people in their best. Let's get real. They have determined Monmouth is an A poll. It doesn't matter. We outperformed Monmouth in the 2021 special elections. It doesn't matter. We outperformed them in the 2022 generic ballots. It doesn't matter. Blah, 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 blah. They have decided they're an A poll and Rasmussen is a crappy poll. And they're going to jump on Rasmussen. Do they have the explanations for why they chose to do this? Are there certain groups that they felt were not represented in the sample, and that's why they decided to get 10 online surveys via email invitation? What made them do that? Most pollsters already have determined, you know what, I need a 70-30 split, phone to online. Rasmussen's publicly published available methodology explains outward to everybody, which some of those questions that they have, many of the questions they asked Rasmussen and threatened to ban them for if they did not respond, the answers to are publicly available on their website. They explain why it is 30% is a sampling from online and using an online panel and what age groups they're targeting to do so. None of that is provided here. Monmouth is responsible for all aspects of survey design, data weighting, and analysis. That's not really true because I know what it's like to work with Dynet. Their interviews are conducted by them. But data weighting and analysis, different story. Now, you do the survey design. If you do something stupid, they're definitely going to say, hey, I'm not putting this through my call center until you clarify this. The full sample is weighted for region, age, education, gender, and race based on voter lists and the U.S. Census information, the ACS, which is the American Community Survey 20 to 21 one-year survey. We have a full census. Why would you use the American Community Survey? And by the way, you have a list base, you said, based on voter list and U.S. Census information. When Rasmussen tried to explain that they start with census information and then apply their likely voter model, they jumped all over them. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Well, why would you break it up into two different demographic modelings here? Are they asked to provide that information? Nope. For results based on this sample, one can say with 95% confidence that the error attributable to sampling has a maximum margin of plus or minus 5.9 percentage points, adjusted for sample design effects 1.56. That is academic for bullshit. That is. You mean that some should be considered a confidence interval because you asked through an online panel? Is that what you're talking about here? Because if it was randomized, you'd be able to give a simple margin of error. Because you did some mixed mode that makes no sense. This many live landline, this many live cell, this many online, 10 online. You know what the subgroup is for 10 interviews? Laura, it just makes, and maybe there is a good reason, but I don't know how you write this up and pretend like you don't have more to explain. What you mean is the overall sampling error is 5.9 percentage points. Sampling error can be larger for subgroups. See the table below. In addition to the sampling error, one should bear in mind that question wording and practical difficulties in conducting surveys can introduce error or bias into the findings of public polls. Oh my God. What you mean is you did not ask questions in a correct order. Also, let's look at some of the weighted demographics here. 46% strong Republicans, 16% Republican that are not strong. Almost 4 in 10 are independents or independents who lean Republican. Ladies and gentlemen, the Republican electorate is not going to be 52% or 62% Republican. Iowa, very conservative. It's usually around 81% Republican. Our surveys in the 70s, 15% independent, maybe 20% independent, something else. Handful of Democrats who can vote and open, not many. This is not. That's very moderate. Very, very moderate. And you're just going to know it just from, that's really 18 to 34, 16%. That's about right. I mean, age is pretty close. Hispanic, we got a little bit more Hispanics this year, but, pretty close. Black 9, Asian, it's whatever, 80% white. Yeah, that's about right. That's ballpark. But again, this is 1:30. I'm actually going to go through some of your stuff here because we didn't on Friday. But again, ultimately, the bottom line is, Norm, this is a great point. I mean, you're making my point right here, Norm. Does having foreign call centers affect the data? Of course it does. There are Americans who simply will not talk to somebody who's not properly speaking to them in an interview. And Dynata actually does have some good call centers. Sorry, hit the thing. Yeah, no, sorry. And here is the problem with not having a voter list appended sample. So we could run you through, and by the way, for people who make fun of Clarity campaigns, they say, oh, it's too pro-Trump. It's a left-wing group, by the way. They're using techniques to make sure something like this doesn't happen, Casey. They'll also do like these attention tests, stuff like that. But if you vary greatly from your voter list profile, you will get flagged, stuff like that. So, that's the bottom line is, that's Jay says, I'm Indian and I can't stand the calls from the call centers in India. Yeah, well, there you go. Imagine how normal people, not normal, excuse me, you know what I mean? Like normal English speaking people feel when that happens. They don't like it. They just hang right up, Jay. They just hang right up. Even with us, we've gotten calls, and my wife's Hispanic, but sometimes the accent's so heavy, she can't understand it, or has difficulty understanding it. Remember? And here's
I hang up on them.
And you hang up on them.
Learn English. Click.
Yeah, that's it. And that's another thing. That was only English. Did you see? It said those surveys were only conducted in English. Well, it's 11% Hispanic. 11% Hispanic. 1 out of 10 is self-identified Hispanic. Then they should have had an option to take it in another language. It's not going to be much, but still, I mean, there can be a very serious language barrier. So that's a problem in and of itself. But overall, again, Monmouth as a pollster, Monmouth could absolutely say, this is why we did this. And those explanations can make sense. Point being is that they're not being asked to explain it. It's not normal. It's not within, like I said, most pollsters have an idea of how much during different cycles they need to collect through this mode, and that's their normal way of doing it. Rasmussen is a consistent 70-30 or 75-25, whatever it may be. I'd have to go and look it up. It's consistent every day, the same thing. If they do make a change, they put out a whole public press release about why they made that change. And by the way, I mean, again, some of it I even know, and I'm not their chief pollster. It's like, why did you make this change 6 months ago? Well, I said it in a press release. We will often use the Consumer Sentiment Index, the survey of consumers, to guide us with party affiliation, because self-identified party affiliation is fluid. It is not static like registration. And we'll start with the census, but then the likely voter model can, if women are more likely, then if women are 52%, but this election they're more likely to take a survey, then it could end up that women are 53% of the sample when the likely voter model is applied or whatever. Those are easy questions. Those are some more complicated questions, and they weren't asked a damn thing. A+. A+, baby. A+. What a joke. It's just, it is a double standard. That's what it is. There's no other way to put it. It's a double standard. Let's see. Hold on. I want to just check something out. Somebody just mentioned civics. This just came out. Let me see if I can pull it up specifically. This is brand new. All right, here we go. I got it. We talked about Cernovich last 24, 48 hours has sent up some tweets I've had to respond to, because he said at this point, DeSantis can't be the strongest nominee because you need MAGA to win, and he's not winning MAGA. And the people are just kind of like, and I love Kurt, but he kind of just dismissed it the other day. Oh, they'll come back. No, they won't. They didn't come back in 2018, and he was still the president. Not all of them came out, even though a lot of them didn't realize that his impeachment really was at stake. They didn't come out in 2022. They came out in certain states where he went to bat for Senate candidates. It's how they beat Joe Donnelly. They came out, for others, Josh Hawley. There were a couple where we could measurably see them, but they didn't come out in Minnesota. They didn't come out in Michigan. They didn't come out in Iowa. They didn't come out in Ohio. They did come out in Florida, but he spent a lot of time in Florida. Otherwise, Ron DeSantis wouldn't even be a politician right now. Or he wouldn't be where he is right now. But for the most part, they're not. And I don't know how you're going to get him back if this is what you say. And Evan, one thing I would say is this, it's another thing with the North Carolina primary polls that some suggested were closer than they are. Trump will kill anyone. He will kill Ron DeSantis or anybody else in North Carolina. That's going to happen. We went over this already. Ted Budd had a huge lead, bigger in our polling than others. And he won every single county except for Mecklenburg. And he still almost won Mecklenburg. What did he lose by 30 votes or something ridiculous? Even Trump will, in the primary, Trump will carry North Carolina. And in the general, the name of the game in like Wake County is don't fall below 35%. And you need some of those remaining Democrats that are white to vote for you in order for that not to happen. And older Democrats. But here's this brand new, somebody had just brought this up in the chat. And it just literally came out as we were talking about it. The favorability rating for Ron DeSantis has fallen to the lowest level ever in the civics poll that somebody was just talking about being a part of. In December, for instance, hold on. He's been more favorable in other polls than this one. But a trend line is what matters here. So give me 1 second. Can we go back up? No, I can't. Thank you, though. Yeah, we can go back. Let me just bear with me so I don't destroy something here. Let's go back to December. Actually, so here's the election, the 2022 election. And Ron DeSantis has like a net favorability rating of -2. All right. As time goes on, you can see Republicans starting. Well, it is, if you dig into it, there was independents and Republicans that like him better. All right. And it's about tied at this point. As time goes on, you can just see the very clear trend, which I told you all about, of his unfavorable rating rising and speaking of Gorko, who I'm going to be with tonight, 2 weeks ago on a Sunday show, we talked about this. It's stopped becoming, oh, I like him as a governor, but I just prefer Donald Trump as president. And now it's, you know what? I liked him as a governor, but now I'm starting to I can't stand this guy, right? That's what's happening. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to show by party in a second here. But as you can see now, he's at an incredibly negative unfavorability rate, all right? Republicans. Oops, there we go. So as you can see from the election, low point of unfavorable, 5%. Look where we are now. All right, so there's the same basically amount, the same percentage that's Trump or bust, and his favorability rating has cratered all the way to 70. Now, if we get rid of that, let's look at independents. There we go. All right, so in February when he was really riding high, all right, you have him about even with independents. All right, he was actually even favorable before that, but his polling high started to fall out. I mean, it was basically a sugar high. Started to fall out. Now look where he is with independents. Why does this matter? Because the people that we're seeing in Iowa and Ohio and in Michigan, whether you're us, Mitchell Research, Suffolk University, that's them. It's not just about Republicans. These are people who don't particularly like the Republican Party. They will call themselves Republicans when Trump is in an election. But when he is not, they're Trumplicans. Right, Laura? Trumplicans. But when he is not, they will call themselves independents. And this is not good. Now, college graduate. Interesting too. Trump can't win an election and Ron DeSantis can because he does so much better with college graduates. Okay. Not looking so great. Biggest polling story going on right now is that Trump is winning even with postgraduate Republican voters. When things tightened, they tightened because DeSantis was doing better with college graduates. Trump was still killing him with non-college graduates. And here's postgrads. Even worse. So you would need a huge turnout with non-college, and it's still unfavorable. This is just not good at all. Just not good. It blows a big hole in the whole idea of Ron DeSantis' justification, the justification that every candidate needs to run for president. He chose, like many, many other establishment candidates before him, to choose the electability argument. He based that entire electability argument on women, educated voters, and suburban voters. And it's not working out for him. Here's non-college independent females. Non-college independent females. All right, if we get rid of the non-college and we just look at female independents, not much better. Females overall, not good. Another big polling story that we've been trying to set is that Trump's lead is coming from women. His outperformance against Joe Biden versus Ron DeSantis, his underperformance against Joe Biden, is not because he does particularly, much stronger with men. It's not what is happening. He does better with independents. He does better with non-college grads. He does better with younger voters. He does better with women. And he does better with non-white voters. Never gets old being ahead of everybody else. Never gets old. This is unbelievable. You're going to win Arizona and Georgia like this? You're going to do that much better with white voters in Arizona that losing the Hispanic vote that Trump will get is worth it? No, you're not. You're going to lose. That's what's got me right. I mean, which one is more likely? It's more likely that you will lose. And in Iowa, bring it up. There's Florida, but let's talk Iowa. By the way, we are going to do Florida again pretty soon because Florida's just a big deal. I mean, that's make or break, dude. If you can't poll any better in Florida, you're not going to win Iowa or New Hampshire. Get out of here. And even if you win Iowa, it's like this whole thing, folks. Let's entertain for a second that evangelicals stop breaking for Trump by 30 points in Iowa. So what? He's moved to the right so much in an attempt to outflank Trump on the right that he is now wholly unelectable. Not only that, but he'll turn off voters in New Hampshire and South Carolina because it's more moderate than Iowa. Even people don't seem to realize this. South Carolina is not like Iowa. Southern state or no southern state, it isn't. It's more moderate. That's why Donald Trump's vote share there was higher in 2016. Let's look at Iowa. And by the way, in a general election, you cannot win Iowa with just Republicans. The last time they tried, it was like R+2. When Trump ran, it was an R+11 electorate. Because those independents come out and they say, you know what, actually, I'm a Republican when Trump's on the ballot. Let's go to, let's go, actually, yeah, let's do by, we just went over this. Iowa's very white, so it's not worth bringing up race in this one. This sample's just way too small. But let's look at Trump voters and go against DeSantis versus Biden. DeSantis does have a lead in Iowa. It's 2 points. But he's only getting 75.5% of Trump's voters. He only gets less than 2% of Biden's vote against Trump. You cannot lose a quarter of the Trump vote and make it up by winning 1.5% more of Biden's vote than Trump. How do you know? That is exactly 6 interviews. 6. 109 is how many he loses of the Trump vote. 109 people that we interviewed said they would vote for Donald Trump, but not Ron DeSantis. 109. And he only picked up 6 from Joe Biden. Loses the 3-party green vote, just like, not much more different than Trump. Trump wins some of that he doesn't, but everything matters in an election. But you have 44.8% of the would not vote that does go to DeSantis. You have that. But if you now change it to Ron DeSantis versus Biden, and you look at Trump's numbers, Trump gets 83% of DeSantis' voters. Gets about 3 of Biden's. Not that big of a deal. It's that Trumplican base that matters. And that's why Trump has a 6-point lead. And this is, by the way, not discounting. Like, if we were to get rid of the would not votes and, tighten the screen, then everyone's vote share is going to rise. So if we did, just looking at the numbers of would not vote, that's is a much bigger number for the DeSantis versus Biden matchup than there is versus Trump versus Biden. So, I'm just going to guesstimate here. Maybe DeSantis would be ahead 41-39. Trump would be ahead more like 45-39, something like that. But Joe Biden is at the same level with both of them. The difference is DeSantis' support is measurably smaller because of the people who just won't vote. And then here's the problem. In 2018, in a state like Iowa, Democrats actually did very well again. Because, as Barnes and I have tried to explain, these people, hold on. The difference here between this and this are not guaranteed Republican votes. If they do come out without Trump on the ballot, which is never a guarantee, and, good news for Republicans, actually not that likely. But if they do, it isn't a guarantee that they will just vote Republican. And people always say to me, well, Rich, then what does that mean about the Trump cult? It means they're not a cult, actually. Partisans are more of a cult. It means they see both parties the same. Nobody is a good guy or a bad guy in their worldview. They see Democrats as dangerous. They also see Republicans as dangerous. Can you blame them? I'm not sure I can. Anyway, and Trump has, just looking at locals, Caroline Wren and RFK Jr. spoke about dark money and ballot harvesting. Democrats don't need Biden nor Katie Hobbs to campaign because they can harvest votes. That's right. In areas they need to swing elections. If they take Biden out, they just plug in Newsom for candidate X and still win. My question, does polling matter when the votes are so... Well, yeah, of course it does. Of course it does. I mean, it tells you what big of a job. It's not true that they can just win with any other candidate. Republicans lost that election in Arizona because of the way they decided to only vote on election day. And Democrats threw a wrench in their election day turnout, and they lost. That's why. I mean, Carrie Lake should have won that election by at least 2 points. If Masters would have been a little closer, we all had Masters either basically statistically tied. I think us and Data Orbital had him up by like 1. But he just didn't get that turnout at the end. He just didn't. But Lake was winning areas that Blake Masters was losing. The problem is people just could not deal with that kind of election day thing. And voters listen to the strategy of the party that they intend to vote for. And by the way, I don't know if you guys saw, but Trump just endorsed the Bank Your Vote project. Now, here's the problem. That's great and everything, because you need the biggest party leader to say, get your vote out there. The more you vote early, the less you take, the more you take off the table for them to fabricate. I mean, there's no other way to put it. However, the RNC is not the entity to do this. They're not. Democrats don't use a centralized entity to do it. They use third-party groups to do it in their own backyards. The DNC does not do it. And frankly, after seeing this billion-dollar permanent data operation that Rona was touting, I applaud her for attempting to close the data gap. But if that cost you $1 billion, then you are not the one to handle this. People like Scott Pressler and local entities, Carrie Lake should have her own third-party group, and they should be doing it in Arizona. And, Wisconsin Republicans, they know their state better than anybody else, and there should be third-party groups doing it in there. And in Michigan, there's, I don't know if he wants me to talk about it yet, but this is something that is much smarter because the party is completely devoid of money, and they're totally, they're off the rails. They're a mess. All right. But I don't know if he wants me to talk about it yet, but I'm just saying they're going to get, a partner with Turning Point, and Turning Point's going to kick out, and they're going to have their own app where local groups can go out and harvest and register people for permanent absentee mail-in votes. They'll get those low propensity Trump voters on that list. And that's just, they know Michigan better than Rona does, and she's from Michigan, but nobody knows it better than those locals. And, of course, it all starts with the vendor. Don't get your list from the places these people get their list. I mean, that's your starting point, and you don't have time. Every list is going to have mistakes and inaccuracies, but you don't have time to clean 50, 40% of a list. You just don't. All right. What's up, though? I know I got to go because it's
No, I want you to answer these questions quick.
Blast through them quick.
Yes.
Well, that was one of them, so do I have a favorite VP pick for Trump? I don't think you guys agree with me on this. I actually think I'm warming up to Carrie Lake like Barnes is. I am because Trump needs to protect himself. He needs to have somebody that the deep state is just as afraid of. Otherwise, they'll just kill him. I'm sorry. That's where I am in the world. People are like, oh my God, Rich, that sounds crazy. Human beings kill for the dumbest stuff. People can be pushed to do horrible things for the dumbest reasons. for a lot less wealth and power that comes with the presidency and the power of the United States government. You think they wouldn't kill for that? You're stupid. Of course they would and have. That being said, the best battleground pick right now would be Ron Johnson. I think Ron Johnson would actually add, you need Wisconsin. Arizona will be tough. It will be. So will Georgia. Actually, Georgia will be less tough than Arizona. Because I'm telling you, even when we had Walker up by 1 lousy point, Trump was still up by 11. And we're not alone. I think it was Atlanta Journal-Constitution had him up by like 10 or 11 points. It was huge. Arizona, though, was a smaller disparity between Lake and Trump. So Lake was up 3, Trump was up 6. It's only a few points. That's not that much considering Hobbs went on edge or out because of the... I don't think Republicans will make that same mistake. Go vote and vote early. But we'll see. What percentage of registered independents would you estimate are actually independent, truly persuadable, and could go either way from election to election? 10%. That's about it. Serious. Overall, I'm talking about 10%. Everyone else largely has a lean, and it's only a matter of who comes out and who doesn't. But as far as truly persuadable, it's about 9 to 12%, and I'm ballparking it to 12. That's it. 8 to 12 has been what our polling has shown in national polling. It's been about 8 to 12% total of the, so that's it. It's not a lot. That's it. It's overstated. The win the middle is the most overplayed. Yeah. I mean, and by the way, underwhelming and not true. I mean, Barack Obama completely abandoned the middle in 2012 and went for his base. And because his base outvoted Republicans by such a significant disparity, he was able to hold on even though he lost that middle that is persuadable, right? Thanks, Dissonant. I try. I mean, I'm not even trying to be the vanguard. I'm just saying, like, I appreciate that because I try to serve at least some kind of a role that is like enough of the nonsense. Back on planet Earth. We're going to start calling, like the first segment, we're going to start calling it Back on Planet Earth, like, because I'm just tired of this crazy. Money Q Locals. Send a $5 tip. Thank you. If I gave $100, then a couple months later gave $100, and then a couple months later $100, am I still counted as a small donor? Yes, because your individual contributions are below $200. You're a low dollar contributor. Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, by the way. That was a great question. Are you telling me the judge rejected Hunter Biden's plea deal? I haven't seen this. I don't want to answer anything yet, but we're going to have him back on. But Will Scharf, who's running for the Attorney General of Missouri and also is a former federal prosecutor, he said, we're going to have him back on. We're talking about getting him back on. He said that it's his take that, because I always ask, I'm a big proponent of stay in your damn lane. And he was basically saying was he didn't think the judge was aware of some of this stuff and they were trying to pull the wool over his head and that this is going to be a problem. He's, as a former federal prosecutor, this is not going to stand. This is going to be a problem for them. And apparently he was right. Will Ron pull the pin? I'm hearing he's going to stay. If he stays like Governor Greitens, speaking of Missouri, he ran for Senate. He didn't win. Eric Schmidt won because Trump didn't get involved in the primary, and they used, again, family issues to take out Greitens. He wrote an op-ed basically saying that, that the Rose of the world are going to try to keep him in. It's over. This is over. Ron DeSantis' campaign is over. You know what a campaign looks like that's dead. But they're going to keep it going because, they have some friends still in the media, and that'll help them keep the paycheck going. The grift is alive until they kill the candidate forever. I'm telling you, I've heard it from the horse's mouth that he's not getting out. And a lot of times, all candidates' campaigns will just say that. But this is somebody who expects a paycheck to continue. They intend to ride the pack for as long as they can. Here's the problem. They're already dangerously dipping into illegal territory. Laura Loomer is right. The post that she uncovered, if you really are that fundraiser in Utah, if you're really that close to each other and you got Jeff Rowe and the campaign talking and, you're all speaking about common strategy and how you're going to coordinate to donors to get them to open their wallets again, that's illegal coordination. So Loomer, again, call her what you will. But Laura Loomer Bannon said, Loomer the assassin, she murked Ron DeSantis' campaign. A good deal of it. She did. You got to give it to her. This is real. If later someone is charged from this, it will be because of Laura Loomer. This is not legitimate. Well, I went through all the posts. I read what the donor said. That's illegal campaign coordination. I'm sorry. It is. So the more they try to rely on PAC doing the role of a campaign so these people can continue to get money, then the more danger they put themselves in. However, who ultimately will suffer for it? Ron DeSantis. That's who. All right, so I got as many as I can, Laura. I do got a roll here. I got some of them in there. Just see, truly, yeah. I mean, these are good questions. But I got Jack in like 2 minutes. Is there a DeSantis or never Trump or bust cause his army of influence suggests there is? How big would it be? It's small compared. It exists, but it's so small. It's meaningless compared to the Trump or bust. Meaningless. And those people anyway, they're trying to trick you into thinking that's not just a normal realignment. And that's part of what is always happening with political coalitions. They're evolving. They are just Democrats. And believe you me, they have been voting Democrats since Hillary Clinton at least. They're full of crap when they're telling you that they are Republicans. And the voters within that block, that's why you see like Nebraska 2 and others, like that moving to the left. They have been voting Democrat, folks. They're foolish. I'll trade them for the state of Michigan in a heartbeat. Goodbye. I don't care. They're the past. And by the way, they'll be dead in a decade later because they're all like 65 and over. I just don't care. I want the 30 to 45s. I want the 25 to 29s. That's not being cruel. That's being smart, right? I would rather take the working Hispanics than even Kurt and I were talking about it on Monday. They don't breed. They kill their babies. These white educated people. There's no future. They're at the zenith of their power right now. It's all downhill for them after. Please give me the Southern working Hispanic independence. I mean, this is no friggin' brainer. A no-brainer. And it'd be the biggest irony in American politics that they open the border to a bunch of votes they thought they were going to get, and those people turn on them, and it's the end of their party.
And I just want to
Kick those asses out and wise up, and that's how you're going to do it. Go ahead.
I just want to say we love you guys.
Yep.
And Jay Patel's son, Krish Patel, we just want to say hello. And say hi.
Oh yeah, hello. Jay's a great addition to the community.
Yeah.
He really is. I'll see you guys on Friday. All right, don't forget Gorka tonight around 7:30. Just tune in at 7, and Jack right now. So I gotta go. All the best, folks. Thanks for watching. See you on Friday. Don't worry, I haven't forgot about voter analysis in New England. We just got a little bit busy. I'll see you guys.
Deuces.
Deuces.